Tommy heard the music before anyone else did. That's what happened when you couldn't see the world. Your ears became your eyes, and right now those ears were pressed against the cold metal door of the school music room, listening to Mrs. Henderson teach piano to the fourth graders. He knew he shouldn't be here. Lunch period meant he was supposed to be in the cafeteria with everyone else, eating his sandwich and minding his own business. But the cafeteria was loud and chaotic, full of trays clattering and kids shouting. The music room hallway was quiet, peaceful, and if he positioned himself just right, he could hear every single note that came from that piano. Today, Mrs. Henderson was teaching Mozart. Tommy didn't know it was Mozart, of course. He just knew it was beautiful. His fingers moved against his leg, mimicking the patterns he heard. Left hand, right hand, both together. He'd been doing this for months now, ever since September. It was almost December and he had the whole first movement memorized. "Tommy, what are you doing here?" He jumped, nearly losing his balance. It was Mr. Peters, the hall monitor. Tommy's white cane clattered against the floor. "I'm sorry, sir. I was just listening. You should be at lunch. Come on, let's go." Mr. Peters wasn't mean about it. He never was. He just didn't understand. Nobody really did. Tommy picked up his cane and let Mr. Peters guide him back toward the cafeteria, the music fading behind him with each step. That evening, Tommy sat at the small kitchen table in their apartment while his mom heated up leftovers from her shift at the diner. The apartment wasn't much. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, and a kitchen that was barely big enough for both of them to stand in at the same time. But it was home and his mom worked hard to keep it that way. "How was school today, baby?" his mom asked, setting a plate in front of him. He could smell meatloaf and mashed potatoes. It was okay, Tommy said, picking up his fork. He knew where everything was on his plate. His mom always put things in the same spots. Meat at 6 o'clock, potatoes at 9, vegetables at 3. Just okay? Tommy hesitated. He wanted to tell her about the music, about how he could hear the patterns and remember them, about how his fingers itched to touch those piano keys. But he'd heard the conversations. He knew money was tight. His mom worked the morning shift at the diner and then cleaned offices at night. She was always tired, always worried about bills. "Yeah, just okay," he repeated, taking a bite. His mom sat down across from him with her own plate. "Mrs. Henderson called me today." Tommy's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. "Am I in trouble?" "No, honey. She said you've been spending your lunch periods outside her classroom, listening to the piano lessons." Tommy felt his cheeks get hot. "I'm sorry. I won't do it anymore." That's not what she said, Tommy." His mom's voice was soft. "She said she thinks you have a gift. She said she's heard you humming the pieces she teaches and you get them right. Every note." Tommy didn't know what to say to that. "Is that true? Can you remember the songs?" I guess so. I don't know. I just hear them and then they're in my head." His mom was quiet for a moment. Tommy could hear her breathing, could almost feel her thinking. "Do you want to learn to play? Really play, I mean." "More than anything," Tommy whispered. "But I know we can't afford it. I know we don't have a piano. I know." "Hush now." His mom reached across the table and took his hand. "Let me worry about what we can and can't afford. You just focus on being 8 years old, okay?" But Tommy did worry. He'd heard his mom on the phone with the electric company asking for an extension. He'd heard her skip meals, claiming she wasn't hungry when he knew she was. He knew that piano lessons cost money they didn't have. A piano cost money they really didn't have. The next day at school, Tommy was called to the counselor's office. Mrs. Brooks was nice enough, but Tommy always felt like she was trying too hard to be cheerful around him. "Tommy, I wanted to talk to you about your class schedule," she said after he sat down. "Okay. I've been reviewing your progress, and I think we need to focus on skills that will help you in the real world. Practical things." Tommy's stomach sank. He knew where this was going. "Your mom mentioned that Mrs. Henderson talked to her about music lessons, and while I think that's wonderful as a hobby, I'm not sure it's the best use of your time. Students with visual impairments need to focus on independent skills, technology training, things that will help them get jobs when they're older." "But I could get a job with music," Tommy said quietly. "People do that." "Well, yes, but it's very competitive. And the reality is, Tommy, that you'll face extra challenges. I just want to make sure you're prepared for the real world." The real world. Tommy was so tired of hearing about the real world, as if his world wasn't real. as if the music in his head wasn't real. "Can I go back to class now?" he asked Mrs. Brookside. "Of course. I'm just trying to help, Tommy. I want what's best for you." Everyone wanted what was best for him, but nobody asked him what he wanted. That afternoon, Tommy did something he'd never done before. Instead of just listening at the door, he waited until Mrs. Henderson's class ended and all the students filed out. Then he carefully made his way inside the music room. His cane helped him navigate around chairs and music stands until he found it. The piano. His hands trembled as he reached out and touched the keys. They were smooth and cool under his fingers. He pressed one down gently. Middle C. He knew it was middle C because he'd heard it 1,000 times. He pressed another key, then another. Slowly, carefully, he began to play the Mozart piece he'd memorized. His left hand found the bass notes while his right hand picked out the melody. It wasn't perfect. He hit wrong notes, had to stop and start over a few times. But it was there. The music was there inside him, waiting to come out. "Tommy?" He snatched his hands back as if the piano had burned him. Mrs. Henderson stood in the doorway and he couldn't see her face, but he could hear the surprise in her voice. "I'm sorry," he said quickly, standing up. "I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have touched it. I was just—" "How long have you been able to do that?" she interrupted. "Do what?" "Play. How long have you been able to play like that?" I can't play. I was trying to copy what I heard you teach last week." There was a long silence. Tommy gripped his cane, waiting for her to tell him to leave, to stop wasting time with impossible dreams. Instead, she said, "Tommy, sit back down at that piano." He did. Confused. "Now play that piece again. From the beginning," so he did. And this time he didn't stop when he made mistakes. He kept going, letting the music flow through his fingers, trusting his ears to guide him. When he finished, the room was silent except for his own breathing. "Oh my God," Mrs. Henderson whispered. "You learned that just from listening?" Tommy nodded. "Tommy, I need to call your mother. Right now." Tommy's mom arrived at the school 20 minutes later, still wearing her diner uniform. He could smell the coffee and bacon grease that always clung to her clothes after the morning shift. She was supposed to be home resting before her night job, but here she was rushing to school because Mrs. Henderson had called. "Is everything all right? Is Tommy okay?" His mom's voice was breathless, worried. "He's fine, Linda. Better than fine, actually. Please sit down." Mrs. Henderson guided her to a chair. Tommy sat at the piano bench, his hands folded in his lap, wondering if he was in trouble after all. "I asked you to come because I needed you to hear something," Mrs. Henderson continued. "Tommy, would you play that Mozart piece again? The one you just played for me?" Tommy's fingers found the keys. He took a deep breath and began to play. The notes came easier this time, more confident. He could feel his mom's presence in the room, could sense her attention focused entirely on him. When he finished, nobody spoke for a long moment. "He learned that by ear," Mrs. Henderson finally said. "He's been listening outside my classroom during lunch for months." "Linda, your son has perfect pitch. Do you understand what that means?" Not really," his mom admitted. "It means he can hear a note and know exactly what it is. Most musicians train for years and never develop this skill. Some people are just born with it. And Tommy, he doesn't just have perfect pitch. He has something more. He can hear complex pieces of music and play them back, almost perfectly after hearing them once. But he's never had lessons," his mom said quietly. "He's never even touched a piano before today." "I know. That's what makes this so remarkable." Tommy heard his mom sigh, the kind of sigh that came before bad news. "Mrs. Henderson, I appreciate you telling me this. I really do. But we can't afford piano lessons. We can barely afford rent. I work 2 jobs as it is, and—" "I'm not asking you to pay for anything," Mrs. Henderson interrupted. "I want to teach Tommy myself." During his lunch period, free of charge, the room went silent again. Tommy gripped the edge of the piano bench. "Why would you do that?" his mom asked, and Tommy could hear the suspicion in her voice. People didn't do things for free. There was always a catch. "Because I've been teaching music for 23 years, Mrs. Henderson said. "And I've never seen a gift like this. Not even close. And because every child deserves a chance to develop their talents regardless of whether they can pay for it." Tommy's mom started crying. He could hear the soft sounds she made when she tried not to let him know she was upset. "I don't know what to say. Say yes. Let me work with your son. Let's see what he can do." His mom was quiet for a moment, then Tommy felt her hand on his shoulder. "Is this what you want, baby?" Really want? Yes, Tommy whispered. Please, then okay. Okay, we'll try it. And just like that, Tommy's life changed. The first official lesson happened the next day. Mrs. Henderson started with the basics, explaining the layout of the keyboard, teaching him proper hand position and posture. But Tommy absorbed everything so fast that within a week, she'd moved past the beginner books and into intermediate material. You're supposed to struggle with this, she joked during their second week together. Most students take months to read music this complex. I'm not reading it, Tommy reminded her. I'm just copying what you show me. That's the thing, though. You're not just copying, you're understanding it. You're finding the patterns, the structures. That's real musicianship, Tommy. The other kids started noticing. Some of them would peek through the music room window during lunch, watching the blind kid play piano. Most were just curious. A few were actually impressed. But some, like Derek Mitchell and his friends, thought it was weird. What's the point? Derek said one day, loud enough for Tommy to hear even though he was in the hallway. It's not like he can go anywhere with it. He can't even see, Tommy pretended not to hear. But the words stung anyway. Mrs. Henderson heard too, though. Derek Mitchell, my classroom now. Her voice had gone ice cold. Tommy didn't hear what she said to Derek behind the closed door, but Derek never made comments like that again. By the end of the first month, Tommy was playing pieces that high school students struggled with. By the end of the second month, Mrs. Henderson had to bring in her own sheet music from home because he'd exhausted everything in the school's library. I need to find you a real teacher, she admitted one afternoon. Someone who can take you further than I can. You're a real teacher, Tommy protested. I teach beginners and intermediates, honey. You're already past that. You need someone who understands advanced technique, who can train you properly. But that costs money. Mrs. Henderson didn't argue with that. They both knew it was true. The problem wasn't just money, though. The school's piano was falling apart. It had been old when Mrs. Henderson first started teaching, and that was over 2 decades ago. Now, several keys stuck when you pressed them. Others didn't make any sound at all. The whole thing was desperately out of tune, but the school district said there was no money in the budget for repairs, let alone a replacement. I'm sorry. Tommy, Mrs. Henderson said after a particularly frustrating session where Middle D refused to work at all. You deserve better than this old beast. It's okay, Tommy said, though it wasn't really. He'd started hearing the imperfections in the sound, the way certain notes didn't ring true. It made practicing harder, made him second-guess his own playing. It's not okay. You're trying to learn on a piano that's barely functional. She sounded angry, but not at him. The district just approved $50,000 for new football equipment, but they can't spare $2,000 to fix a piano that serves dozens of students. Tommy had heard his mom talk about unfairness before, about how the world worked differently for people who didn't have money. He was starting to understand what she meant. Still, he kept practicing. Every lunch period, every single day, his fingers flew over the keys, his mind memorizing patterns and progressions. Mrs. Henderson brought in recordings for him to listen to at home, great pianists performing pieces he could learn from. His mom bought him a cheap keyboard from a thrift store, even though she really couldn't afford it. It only had 61 keys instead of 88, and the sound was tinny and artificial. But Tommy played it every night until his mom got home from her second job. 3 months after that first lesson, Mrs. Henderson made an announcement during their session. The school is having a spring recital. All the music students perform for their families and the community. I'd like you to play something. Tommy's hands froze on the keys. In front of people? Yes, in front of people. You're ready, Tommy. But what if I mess up? What if, then you mess up and you keep playing? That's what musicians do. She touched his shoulder gently. You have a gift. It's time to share it with the world. That night, Tommy told his mom about the recital. They were eating dinner, leftover soup and crackers. That's wonderful, baby, she said, and he could hear the pride in her voice. I'll make sure I get that night off work. I wouldn't miss it for anything. I'm scared, Tommy admitted. That's okay. Being scared means it matters to you. You're going to be amazing. Tommy wasn't so sure about that, but he practiced anyway, choosing a piece by Chopin that Mrs. Henderson had played for him. It was beautiful and sad and complicated, and sometimes Tommy thought maybe it was too hard. Maybe he should pick something easier, but then he'd sit down at that broken old piano, press the keys that still worked, and let the music take over. And in those moments, nothing else mattered. Not the stuck keys, not the fear, not the kids who thought he was weird, just the music, flowing through him like water, like breath, like something he'd been born knowing how to do. He didn't know it yet, but that recital was going to change everything, not just for him, but for people he hadn't even met yet. Because sometimes all it takes is one moment, one performance, one chance to show the world what you can do. That moment was coming, and Tommy was almost ready for it. The letter came home 2 weeks before the recital. It was a notice about a town hall meeting to discuss the school district's budget cuts. Tommy's mom read it out loud while they ate breakfast. "They're cutting the arts programs," she said, her voice tight with anger. "Music, theater, painting, all of it. They say there's no money. Does that mean no more lessons with Mrs. Henderson?" Tommy asked, his heart sinking. "I don't know, baby, but I'm going to that meeting. Someone needs to speak up for kids like you." The meeting was on a Tuesday night at the high school auditorium. Tommy's mom had to call in sick to her evening cleaning job, which meant losing money they couldn't afford to lose. But she went anyway, and she brought Tommy with her. The auditorium was packed. Tommy could hear dozens of conversations happening at once, people angry and worried about different things. Some parents were upset about sports programs, others were concerned about class sizes. Everyone had something they were fighting for. Tommy and his mom found seats near the middle. The folding chair was uncomfortable, and the room smelled like old books and floor polish. Tommy held his white cane across his lap and listened. The school board members sat at a long table on the stage. They had charts and graphs and spreadsheets all explaining why they had to make cuts. The district was in debt. Property taxes hadn't increased enough. The state had reduced funding. On and on it went. Numbers and explanations that all added up to the same thing. Programs had to go. When they opened the floor for public comment, hands shot up all over the room. One by one, people approached the microphone set up in the aisle. A football coach argued for keeping sports programs. A parent talked about how theater had helped her shy daughter find confidence. A teacher pleaded for smaller class sizes. Then Tommy's mom stood up. He heard her take a deep breath. "Go ahead, ma'am," the board president said. Tommy's mom walked to the microphone. Her hand was shaking. He could tell because she was still holding his, and he could feel the tremor. "My name is Linda Peterson," she said. Her voice was soft at first, but it grew stronger. "And I'm here to talk about the music program." "We've heard from several people about arts programs," one of the board members interrupted. "We understand they're valued, but we have to prioritize core academics and—" "Please, just let me speak," his mom cut in. "I'll be quick." The board member nodded, though he didn't look happy about it. "My son Tommy is 8 years old. He's been blind since birth. When he started school, everyone told me to be realistic about his future. Focus on practical skills, they said. Don't let him dream too big. And I almost listened." Her voice caught. "But then he discovered music. He taught himself to play piano by listening through a classroom door. In 3 months, he's learned what takes most students years. His teacher says he has a gift. A real gift." Tommy felt his face get hot. He wasn't used to being talked about like this in front of all these people. "Now you want to cut the music program," his mom continued. "You want to take away the one thing that makes my son feel like he can do anything. Like his disability doesn't define him. And I know you'll say we can't afford it. But I work 2 jobs and I can't afford to lose hope for my son. None of us can afford to tell our children that their dreams don't matter because of budget cuts." Several people in the audience clapped. But Tommy also heard someone laugh. It was a short, sharp sound like a bark. "That's very touching," a man's voice said from somewhere behind them. The voice was deep and smooth, the kind of voice that was used to being listened to. "But with all due respect, we're talking about hundreds of students here. We can't make budget decisions based on one child's hobby." "It's not a hobby," Tommy's mom said, turning toward the voice. "It's his future." "His future as what? A concert pianist?" The man laughed again, and this time others joined in. "Look, I'm sure the kid is talented. But let's be realistic. Even fully sighted children struggle to make it as professional musicians. The arts are wonderful, but they're extras. Luxuries. We need to focus on what actually prepares kids for real jobs." Tommy felt his mom's hand tighten around his. She was furious. He could tell by the way she was breathing. "Who are you?" she asked. "Richard Chen. I own Chen Development. I've built half the commercial buildings in this town, and I pay more in property taxes than probably anyone else in this room. So yes, I think I have a right to an opinion about how that money gets spent." Tommy had heard that name before. Chen Development. They had signs all over town, big buildings with the company name in gold letters. Mr. Chen was rich. Really rich. Then you should understand, Tommy's mom said, her voice shaking now, what it means to invest in potential, to see something valuable and help it grow. I understand business, Mrs. Peterson. I understand return on investment. And I'm sorry, but betting the district's limited resources on a blind 8-year-old's piano dreams isn't a smart investment. The room got very quiet. Tommy wished he could disappear. He wished they'd never come to this meeting. My son has perfect pitch, his mom said. He learns pieces in a single day that take other students months. His teacher says she's never seen anything like it in 23 years of teaching. If you actually heard him play, you'd understand. If he's that good, I'll tell you what, Mr. Chen's voice was mocking now. If your blind son can play piano well enough to impress me, I'll personally write a check for a brand new concert grand piano for the school. How's that? Put my money where my mouth is, people started murmuring. Some laughed nervously. Others seemed uncomfortable. You're serious? Tommy's mom asked. Completely. Bring the kid to play. If he's as amazing as you say, I'll buy the school a piano. If he's just okay, well, then we've proven my point about being realistic. Tommy's stomach twisted. This was a trap. This man was making fun of them, making them into a joke in front of everyone, but his mom surprised him. Fine. The school's spring recital is 2 weeks from Thursday at 7 p.m. You come watch my son play, Mr. Chen, and when he's done, you can write that check. The room erupted. Some people clapped. Others argued. The board members tried to restore order, but all Tommy could hear was his own heartbeat pounding in his ears. I'll be there, Mr. Chen said, and Tommy could hear the smirk in his voice. This should be entertaining. On the drive home, neither of them spoke for a long time. Finally, Tommy said, Mom, what did you do? I don't know, baby. I couldn't let him talk about you like that. Like you don't matter. What if I mess up? Or what if I'm not good enough? You are good enough. You're more than good enough. But her voice was uncertain, scared. When they got home, Tommy's mom called Mrs. Henderson. He could hear the whole conversation from his room. I may have made a huge mistake, his mom said, and then explained what happened at the meeting. Mrs. Henderson was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, No, you didn't make a mistake. That man had no right to talk about Tommy like that. And you know what? We're going to prove him wrong. But what if Tommy freezes up? What if the pressure is too much? Then we'll deal with it. But Linda, your son is special. Really special. It's time other people saw that too. After his mom hung up, she came into Tommy's room and sat on the edge of his bed. I'm sorry, she whispered. I put too much pressure on you. It's okay, Tommy said, though his chest felt tight. No, it's not. You're 8 years old. You shouldn't have to prove yourself to some arrogant rich guy who thinks he knows everything. Tommy was quiet for a moment. Then he said, Will there be a lot of people there? At the recital? Probably more now. The news stations were at that meeting. It might be on TV. Tommy's hands were sweating. A few people at a school recital was one thing. TV cameras were something else entirely. I don't know if I can do this, Mom. She pulled him into a hug. Listen to me. You don't have to do anything. We can cancel. We can tell them you're sick. We can forget this whole thing. But even as she said it, Tommy knew they couldn't. That man, Mr. Chen, he'd challenged them in front of everyone. If they backed out now, it would be like admitting he was right. That Tommy was just some kid with an impossible dream. No, Tommy said quietly. I'll do it. I'll play. His mom held him tighter. Then you're braver than I am. That night, Tommy couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about Mr. Chen's laugh, about all those people watching, about what would happen if he failed. Mrs. Henderson believed in him. His mom believed in him. But did he believe in himself? He got out of bed and felt his way to the small keyboard in the corner of his room. He put on headphones so he wouldn't wake his mom and started playing. His fingers found the keys in the dark and the music poured out of him. All his fear, all his hope, all his determination. He played until his hands ached and his eyes were heavy with sleep. 2 weeks. He had 2 weeks to get ready for the most important performance of his life. The news spread fast. By the next morning, everyone knew about the challenge. The local newspaper ran a story with the headline, Blind Student to Prove Doubter Wrong. A TV station posted about it online. Suddenly, Tommy's school recital wasn't just another spring concert. It was an event. The 2 weeks that followed were the hardest of Tommy's life. He practiced every single day, during lunch with Mrs. Henderson and at night on his little keyboard at home. His fingers cramped. His back ached from sitting so long. But he kept going. Mrs. Henderson changed his program. "We're not playing it safe," she told him during practice one afternoon. "If we're going to do this, we're doing it right." She taught him 3 pieces. First, a classical Bach prelude to show his technical skill. Second, a jazz improvisation to prove he could feel the music, not just copy it. And third, something Tommy had never expected. "I want you to compose something," she said. "Compose? Like write my own music?" "You already do it, Tommy. I've heard you playing around with melodies during warm-ups. I want you to write a piece, something from your heart, something real." So Tommy did. Late at night, when his mom was at work and the apartment was quiet, he sat at his keyboard and let his feelings become music. He thought about his mom working 2 jobs just to keep them afloat. He thought about listening through that music room door, desperate to be part of something he wasn't allowed to have. He thought about Mr. Chen's laugh and the way it made him feel small and worthless. All of it went into the music. The sadness, the hope, the determination, the fear. When he finished, he had a piece that was uniquely his. He called it Listening Through Doors. The night of the recital arrived too fast and too slow at the same time. Tommy's mom picked him up from school early so he could get ready. She'd bought him new clothes with money she'd been saving for the electric bill. A nice button-down shirt and dress pants that actually fit him. "You look so handsome," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I'm scared, Mom." "I know, baby. But you're ready. Mrs. Henderson says you're ready." They arrived at the school auditorium an hour before the performance. Tommy could hear the chaos already. People were setting up chairs, testing microphones, running through last-minute preparations. Mrs. Henderson found them backstage. "There are a lot of people out there," she said quietly to his mom. "More than we expected." "How many?" his mom asked. "The auditorium seats 400. We're at capacity and there's a line outside. The fire marshal won't let anyone else in." Tommy felt like he might throw up. "And the news stations?" his mom whispered. 3 of them. Plus people filming on their phones. Mrs. Henderson squeezed Tommy's shoulder. "But you don't worry about that. You just focus on the music, okay? Forget the cameras. Forget Mr. Chen, just play." Easier said than done. Tommy sat backstage while the other students performed. He heard nervous kids stumbling through simple songs. He heard proud parents clapping enthusiastically even when their children made mistakes. It was supposed to be a sweet small school concert, but he'd turned it into something bigger. Something he wasn't sure he could handle. "Is he here?" Tommy asked Mrs. Henderson during a break between performances. He didn't have to say who, front row, right in the center. He brought a friend with him. "What does he look like?" Mrs. Henderson paused. "Expensive suit. Arms crossed. Face that says he'd rather be anywhere else. He's treating this like a joke, Tommy. Like we're all just entertainment for him." Tommy's hands were shaking now. What if he wasn't good enough? What if Mr. Chen was right and this was all just a silly dream? "You're on in 5 minutes, Mrs. Henderson said. "How are you feeling?" "Terrified." "Good. That means you care." She took his hands. "Listen to me. That man out there thinks he knows everything because he has money. He thinks he can decide whose dreams are worth believing in. You're going to show him he's wrong. Not with words. With music. You're going to play so beautifully that even his cold heart has to feel it. Can you do that?" Tommy nodded, not trusting his voice. His mom hugged him tight. "I love you so much. No matter what happens out there, I'm proud of you. You hear me?" "I hear you." Then it was time. Mrs. Henderson led him onto the stage. He could feel the heat from the stage lights. Could hear the sudden quiet as hundreds of people stopped talking and waited to see what the blind kid could do. His white cane tapped against the floor as he crossed the stage. Someone had shown him the path earlier, had helped him count the steps to the piano bench. 12 steps from the wing. Turn right. 3 more steps. The bench would be right there. He found it and sat down. Adjusted his position. Took a deep breath. His hands hovered over the keys. The auditorium was completely silent. 400 people holding their breath, waiting, judging. Tommy thought about his mom working 2 jobs, about Mrs. Henderson giving up her lunch breaks to teach him, about all the people who'd told him to be realistic, to lower his expectations, to accept his limitations. Then he pressed the first key, and everything else disappeared. The Bach prelude flowed from his fingers like water, every note precise, perfect, controlled. His hands moved across the keyboard with a confidence that seemed impossible for an 8-year-old. He heard people shift in their seats, surprised. This wasn't what they'd expected. The prelude ended, and without pause, Tommy transitioned into the jazz piece. This was different, looser, more emotional. His right hand danced over the upper keys while his left hand held down a steady rhythm. He improvised a section, taking the melody somewhere it hadn't gone in practice, following an instinct he didn't know he had. It was risky, but it felt right. Someone in the audience gasped. Tommy smiled. The jazz piece ended to complete silence. Then Tommy spoke. His voice was small but clear in the quiet auditorium. This last piece is something I wrote myself. It's called Listening Through Doors. It's about... He paused, gathering courage. It's about wanting something so badly you can feel it in your bones. About being told you can't have it, and about fighting for it anyway. Then he began to play. This piece was different from the others. It started soft and uncertain, just like Tommy had felt standing outside that music room door. The notes were hesitant, searching. Then they grew stronger as the melody found its voice. The left hand added depth, a steady heartbeat underneath the wandering right hand. The music swelled, became urgent, demanding to be heard. Tommy poured everything into it. Every lunch period spent listening through that door. Every time someone had doubted him. Every night his mom came home exhausted from working 2 jobs. Every moment he'd felt small and worthless and like maybe they were right to tell him to give up. But then the music changed again. It became hopeful, beautiful, free. Because he'd made it here, hadn't he? He was playing. He was making music. And nobody could take that away from him. His fingers flew over the keys now, both hands working together to create something bigger than himself. The melody soared, dipped, twisted, climbed. It was joyful and sad and angry and hopeful all at once. It was everything Tommy felt but could never put into words. The final notes hung in the air, then faded into silence. Tommy sat at the piano bench, his hands still on the keys. His heart pounding so hard he thought everyone must be able to hear it. The silence stretched. 1 second, 2, 3. Then someone started clapping. Just one person at first, then another, then another. Then suddenly the entire auditorium was on their feet and the sound was deafening. People were cheering, crying, clapping so hard it sounded like thunder. Tommy sat frozen, overwhelmed. Mrs. Henderson appeared beside him, gently guiding him to stand. He took a small bow, still stunned by the noise, by the reaction. "Listen to them," Mrs. Henderson whispered in his ear. "They see you, Tommy. They really see you." His mom was crying. He could hear her even over the applause. She pushed through to the stage and wrapped him in her arms. "You did it," she sobbed. "Oh, baby, you did it." The applause went on and on. It felt like forever. Tommy didn't know what to do with it all. This overwhelming wave of approval and love from hundreds of strangers. Finally, the noise died down enough for people to speak. And then Tommy heard footsteps crossing the stage. Expensive shoes on wood. They stopped right in front of him. "Mr. Chen," his mom said, her voice uncertain. The man didn't speak at first. When he did, his voice sounded strange. Rough. Like he'd been crying, though that seemed impossible. "I've been to concerts at Carnegie Hall," Mr. Chen said quietly. "I've heard world-famous pianists. And I've never..." He stopped. "I've never heard anything like that." Tommy didn't know what to say. "You made me feel something I haven't felt in years, son. You made me remember why music matters. Why art matters." Mr. Chen's voice cracked. "I was wrong. So incredibly wrong. And I'm sorry." Then, to everyone's shock, Richard Chen, the richest man in town, the man who'd mocked Tommy in his dreams, knelt down so he was at Tommy's level. "I owe you a piano," he said. "A proper one. The best one money can buy. And an apology. The biggest apology I've ever given anyone." Tommy couldn't stop shaking. Even after Mr. Chen's apology, even after the applause finally died down, his whole body trembled with leftover adrenaline and emotion. His mom held his hand tight as they stood backstage, neither of them quite believing what had just happened. The news cameras had caught everything. Mr. Chen kneeling in front of Tommy, the tears streaming down the businessman's face. The standing ovation that lasted nearly 5 minutes. By the time Tommy and his mom got home that night, the video was already spreading online. Thousands of views, then tens of thousands, then hundreds of thousands. "Look at this," his mom said the next morning, reading comments on her phone. People from all over the country are watching. All over the world, even. Tommy didn't know how to feel about that. He just wanted to play piano. He just wanted to prove he could do it. He hadn't expected any of this. 3 days after the recital, a truck pulled up to the school. Not just any truck. A massive moving truck with Steinway and Sons written on the side. Tommy was in class when Mrs. Henderson came to get him. "You need to come to the music room," she said. Right now. He could hear the excitement in her voice. When they got there, a crowd had already gathered. Students, teachers, even the principal. And in the center of the room sat the most beautiful piano Tommy had ever touched. "It's a Steinway Model D concert grand," Mrs. Henderson whispered, her voice full of awe. 9 feet long. The same kind they use in concert halls. "Tommy, this piano costs more than most people make in a year." Tommy ran his hands along the polished wood, then sat down at the bench. The keys felt different from the old broken piano. Smooth, responsive, perfect. He pressed middle C and the sound that came out was pure and rich and absolutely perfect. "Play something," someone said. So he did. Just a simple scale at first, then a melody. Then before he knew it, he was playing one of the pieces from the recital. The piano responded to every touch, every emotion. It was like the instrument knew what he was trying to say and helped him say it better. When he finished, Mrs. Henderson was crying again. "This is what you deserved all along," she said. A real instrument for a real musician, but that wasn't all. That afternoon, Mr. Chen himself came to the school. He asked to speak with Tommy, his mom, and Mrs. Henderson in private. They met in the principal's office. "I meant what I said on that stage," Mr. Chen began. "I was wrong. About you, about music, about what matters." He cleared his throat. "That night, listening to you play, something broke open in me. I realized I'd become exactly the kind of person I never wanted to be. Someone who measures worth in dollars. Someone who can't see value unless it comes with a profit margin." Tommy's mom shifted uncomfortably in her chair. "Mr. Chen, the piano is more than enough. You don't need to—" "Please let me finish." He paused. "I gave the school a piano, but I'm giving Tommy 3. One for the school, which you've already seen. One for your home, Linda, so your son can practice properly. And one for the community center so other kids like Tommy can have access to quality instruments." Tommy's mom gasped. "We can't accept that. We don't have room for a grand piano in our apartment, and even if we did, it's not a grand for your home. It's an upright professional quality, but it'll fit. And it's not charity, Linda, it's an apology. And it's an investment. Your son has a gift that the world needs to hear." Mr. Chen's voice got quieter. "But I want to do more than just buy pianos. I want to set up a scholarship fund. For kids who have talent but not money. For children who get told their dreams are unrealistic. I'm starting it with $100,000 and I'll keep funding it every year." The room went silent. Tommy felt dizzy. That was more money than he could imagine. "Why are you doing this?" his mom finally asked. "Because I have a daughter," Mr. Chen said softly. "She's 16, and a few years ago she told me she wanted to be a painter, and I told her no. I told her art was a hobby, not a career. I told her to focus on business school, on something practical. We haven't had a real conversation since then. She barely speaks to me anymore." He paused, and Tommy could hear the pain in his voice. Watching Tommy play, seeing his courage, his mother's faith in him, I realized what I'd done to my own child. I took away her dream because I was too blind to see its value. I can't undo that. But maybe I can make sure other kids don't lose their dreams because adults like me don't understand. Mrs. Henderson spoke up. "Tommy needs a proper teacher, Mr. Chen. Someone who can take him to the next level. I've taught him everything I can, but he's beyond my expertise now." "Already arranged," Mr. Chen said. "I've been in touch with Professor Williams at the State Conservatory. She's one of the best piano instructors in the country. She's agreed to take Tommy on as a student. Full scholarship, of course." Tommy felt like he was dreaming. This couldn't be real. Things like this didn't happen to kids like him, but it was real. Over the next few weeks, everything changed. The piano arrived at their apartment, barely fitting through the door. Tommy started lessons with Professor Williams, who pushed him harder than anyone ever had, but also helped him grow in ways he never imagined. The scholarship fund was officially announced, and within a month, 12 other children had applied and been accepted. The story kept spreading. News outlets from across the country called wanting interviews. A video of Tommy's performance hit 10 million views. 20 million. People sent letters and emails, sharing their own stories about being told their dreams were impossible. But the best moment came 3 months after the recital. Tommy was practicing at home when someone knocked on the door. His mom answered, then called out, "Tommy, you have a visitor." It was Mr. Chen, but he wasn't alone. With him was a teenage girl. "Tommy, this is my daughter Amy," Mr. Chen said, and his voice was different now, softer, happier. "She wanted to meet you." "Hi," Amy said shyly. "My dad's been telling me about you, about how brave you were." "I wasn't brave," Tommy said. "I was terrified." "That's what makes it brave," Amy said. "Doing it even when you're scared." She paused. "I'm starting art school in the fall. Dad's paying for it. We're talking again now. Because of you." Tommy didn't know what to say to that. He just wanted to play piano. He hadn't meant to fix anyone's family. "Thank you," Mr. Chen said, and he put his hand on Tommy's shoulder. "You gave me back my daughter. You reminded me what actually matters." 5 years passed. Tommy was 13 now, and his life looked nothing like it had at 8 years old. He'd performed at concert halls in 3 states. He'd won competitions. Professor Williams said he had a real shot at a professional career if he wanted it. But the thing Tommy was most proud of wasn't his performances or his awards. It was the scholarship fund. In 5 years, it had helped over 200 children pursue their passions. Musicians, artists, dancers, writers, kids who'd been told no, who'd been called unrealistic, who'd been told to focus on something practical. The fund had a name now, Listening Through Doors. Just like Tommy's song. Tonight was special, though. Tonight, Tommy was performing at the biggest venue yet, a real concert hall in the city with over 1,000 seats, and it was a fundraiser for the scholarship fund. Every ticket sold would help another kid chase their dream. Backstage, Tommy adjusted his tie for the 10th time. He wasn't 8 anymore, but he still got nervous before performances. His mom was there wearing a new dress that she'd actually bought for herself instead of from a thrift store. She worked one job now, a good job with benefits because Mr. Chen had hired her to help run the scholarship fund. Mrs. Henderson was there too, along with Professor Williams. And Mr. Chen with his daughter Amy, who had her first art gallery showing scheduled for next month. "How do you feel?" his mom asked. "Like I'm 8 years old again, about to face the scariest moment of my life," Tommy admitted. "And look how that turned out." She kissed his forehead. "You changed the world, baby. You're still changing it?" "I just played piano," Tommy said. "No," Mr. Chen spoke up. "You did more than that. You showed people that dreams matter. That talent doesn't care about bank accounts or disabilities or what's supposed to be possible. You showed me that being successful means nothing if you've lost your humanity along the way." The stage manager appeared. 5 minutes. Tommy picked up his cane and let his mom guide him to the wings. He could hear the crowd settling into their seats. 1,000 people. Maybe more, but he wasn't scared anymore. Not really, because he knew something now that he hadn't known at 8 years old. The music wasn't about proving anyone wrong. It wasn't about showing Mr. Chen or Mrs. Brooks or anyone else what he could do. It was about the kid sitting in the audience right now, the one who'd been told their dream was impossible, the one who needed to hear that no was just a word, not a destiny, the one who needed permission to keep fighting. Tommy walked onto the stage. The applause rose up like a wave. He found the piano bench, sat down, let his fingers rest on the keys, and then he began to play. Not because he had to prove anything anymore, but because somewhere out there someone was listening. Someone who needed to hear that impossible was just another word for not yet. Someone who needed hope. And Tommy had plenty of that to give.